We have a new guest in the studio. His name is Victor Bwire. He is the director, media training and development at the Media Council of Kenya. Today we are just talking to government.
Yes, Serikali.
Today is Serikali Day. Serikali is in the studio.
Yes.
We welcome him. We welcome other guests. City, do like that.
Okay. This week our proverbs are from the country of Angola.
Bom dia.
Thank you very much. Yes. One who throws the stone forgets. One who is hit remembers.
Obrigado.
Sayonara.
You know, what you're seeing happening here, Bwana Bwire,
Yes.
is these two individuals
Yes.
trying to demonstrate their vast knowledge.
Of Angolanese.
Yes.
Interesting.
Victor, good morning.
Morning, Eric.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Long time.
Long time, man.
But I follow you.
Good.
Yes.
You should.
You can be sure I follow you.
Very good. Very good. Welcome to the hot seat of the
Thank
Situation Room. Always good to have you here.
Pleasure.
Naona mpaka umevaa label.
Yes.
Your shirt is a Bwire.
Tunajaribu, yes.
You're wearing a Bwire.
Yes.
Well, you know. When you hear that proverb from Angola, one who throws a stone forgets, but one who is hit remembers. What's your interpretation?
You know, when you are hit, you have the scar, and you can always look at it even later, and you see there's somebody or something which hit me one day. But the one who threw it will obviously forget because he doesn't know the impact. So sometimes he will never bother, that I threw a stone one day. So that's why largely the person who incurs, who receives, always would remember, because sometimes there are signs of what happened to him, where the stone hit him, as it were, or how he dodged it, or something he did to avoid it. So that's why it remains in you, the impact.
So the recipient always remembers,
Yes.
whether it's a recipient of a good deed or a bad deed.
True.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana, Eric.
Now, there's a lot that's happening in the media landscape. As the Media Council of Kenya, you sit there, you look at how media is operating, how coverage is happening, what kind of content is put on various media platforms. And of course, you don't just deal with the legacy media, you deal with all media. Just paint for us a picture of from where you sit as a media council, what do you see happening in the trends of media in terms of coverage, in terms of business models, in terms of consumption?
Thank you, Eric, and pleasure, colleagues. One, quickly, happy again, and like I mentioned, I follow the program, and the situation is one of those programs that's still very focused and brings out issues that are for the public good. And I want to encourage you to increase more programs around media discussions, more media issues, because a number of things that are happening in the industry will never be known if some of these discussions are not put on the table. That quite a number of times we discuss sector issues, other sector issues, and bring all manner of guests, but we forget our own industry, and sometimes we lose in terms of a national discussion on some of the issues that are happening. So I want to encourage you, and I appreciate this opportunity. And quickly, the council, like you said, the council is a regulator, as where it will listen to complaints about journalism, but it's also a media development institution. And we work on, and that's why I'm the director for media development. And if you look at the media development indicators, the UNESCO, which is the United Nations body that deals with media matters, has put out the 7 media indicators. What shows that a media in a country or in a society is growing, is helping. So it's not just about media freedom, but in fact the W again, who is one of our partners, also has given some indicators on how do we assess a country that is going well. UNESCO has just released a report on Kenya on the media development indicators for the country. And we look at the first 7, are obviously not going to all the 7, but one of the things is the business model. Is the business model able to pay for the news, to pay rights of journalists, training levels, standards, media support, all those accreditation standards, training, curricula, media freedom, safety of journalists, the issue of gender, They're all mentioned in those indicators. And as a country, obviously, we have made great progress. And Eric, you are sure that before then, before the current constitution, media freedom and development was never mentioned in the constitution. And for the first time, I mean, as a constitution, we have several articles now constitutionally that provide for media development, media freedom, and related. That's a major plus. And even if you look at the Reporters Without Borders global ranking of media freedom in the world, you remember last year Kenya moved from 119 position to 69. That's almost half, and that was a major, show that a lot has happened in the sector, and that we appreciate. Now, obviously, in fact, we are releasing a report on what is called media trends in the country. We do an annual media report where we assess the things you have asked, and we'll be releasing a report actually on 13th of February, which is the World Radio Day, you are aware. So, and one of the things that is coming out in terms of trends that, for example, in media consumption, legacy media is still doing so. I mean, it's still a dominant place. While the issue of alternative media, digital media is a big contributor. But legacy media, in fact, the biggest source of news for Kenyans is TV, followed by radio. I mean, and then obviously we go to to digital. And within the digital also, you start noticing there are also segmentations in terms of where people get the information. So that is going on. I mean, you start seeing that radio is still a dominant player. You know, I have not announced the result here, but you start noticing that radios like Radio Maisha and the rest are highly rated. I mean, Spice in terms. So that already also tells you that radio, TV, that people still go. I mean, a bit deep in the newspaper consumption, but again, you go to age, you find the people 50 and above still read newspapers and they still want the hard newspaper. There are people who are subscribing, but also those models have their own challenges. And I started noticing also that while, yes, we have a very vibrant digital media, but again, where does legacy media stop and where does that online media come? Because remember, most of you now newsrooms are running converged newsrooms, so that you can't say that this is digital media and you have seen in one of the ratings a few years ago, Standard website was rated one of the best. You know, so how then do you say, for example, this is legacy media and Tuko is online? So a number of these blurred lines then start also dealing with the issue of you can't say one against the other. That complementarity is there. And sometimes people also mishandle the issue of the digital movement, that a number of our colleagues, like, for example, what was the trademark business for Standard Group? You know, there was KTN and Standard, the newspaper, and then now the Red. You know. So you can't say you'll kill all these products and run to start websites. You know, you must maintain a balance so that then you don't lose, because there are people who just came to Standard because of the newspaper, for example. So you can't run away from them. So those are some of the statistics that are coming. Biggest news, so you see there's a mix, because you also notice that while digital is big and we can't appreciate, we can't ignore it, but you also start looking at other costs that relate to digital news, and you start noticing that a lot of people go online to get information, not news. So a lot of the people who go online are students who are in college looking for information to do their dissertation, and they don't necessarily go to online. You start noticing things like bundles. The cost of bundles in this country is quite a bit high, and how many people can read a whole newspaper on their phone using their bundles. So that also tells you something, that again, while we are saying that, but the cost of energy, the cost of bundles, the issue of internet does not allow a lot of people to go to get their information news. So that's why you start still noticing that TV is still the biggest source of information for a lot of Kenyans. So those are some of the statistics that are coming out. Obviously, the issue of topics, the politics still, again, you look at politics, but in different ways. Is it the politics of the drama, or is it the politics of public policy and related? So those are some of the crime still rates very high. A lot of people would see an accident. The late Professor Magoha has died. Rest in peace, Prof. But you get it in your WhatsApp.
Yep.
But you want to go to Spice and confirm if is it true. So a lot of confirmation. People still go to Liberty Media to cross-check if that what I have seen on my digital platform is still the truth. So there's a lot of that movement of going this, moving there. So that those are the trends we are seeing. Obviously, people expected, and this, Eric, you have been in this country for long. People expected the government to receive media and say, we are very good friends, we must work together. That will never happen. The issue of tensions between government and media is global and historical.
Sure.
That you can't expect that. So to me, to expect that the DP regard, they will say, media come, we take tea, it's not there. So people, you must just do their work and don't expect this. You are a fourth estate, you have already a defined role, do your work and do it diligently and professionally, and some of these things will work out.
Speaking, Victor, of the defined role, I mean, we're looking at the trends, obviously, but looking at the side of the realization or the re-acknowledgement of journalists, and we say that we know the role of the fourth estate, do we find that over time that the potency of that knowledge has reduced, or has it increased, or has it maintained? Has it remained the same, that we know we still embrace the duty of journalism in Kenyan media? I'm not even looking at a global perspective, but in Kenya today, the role that journalists play.
Media trust is still very high. At least I've read 2-3 other studies that is showing that trust in the media as a source of information, as an accountability or watchdog role is still there. People still respect the media. In fact, the biggest challenge we are having, from what I have seen and read, is the industry itself. There are a lot of disregard and mistreatment, or like what we are raising. It comes from the industry itself. While we cry so much about what the others are doing to us, but we never look at what we do to ourselves as an industry, as a profession. So that while other people are giving media respect and doing that, but that respect cannot come if you don't respect yourself. So as an industry, how much do we respect ourselves?
How?
In the sense that, basic things. One, how for example, do we employ and sack journalists? You sack a journalist by an SMS at 1 a.m. What was in a hurry in sending somebody an SMS? Where's the human rights? If we are to sack Eric from Spice, there are processes. Eric will not die because you sack them a job, but there's a process. Why would you send you an SMS at 7 to sack you? That's dehumanizing of a person. Makes other people look at us, that we write a lot of stories when people in industry area are mistreated, not paid, is page 1. But when journalists are not paid, when journalists are mishandled in the newsroom, nobody talks about it. So how do we expect other people to respect us if we don't respect ourselves, if we don't respect the profession ourselves? So those are, if people stay working professionals, family persons, work for 6 months for 3 months without being paid, and a company is making money, then you allow your journalists to go and extort sources and extort other people, and you are telling people I don't know how my guys survive, they just drive big cars. That's an editor or a station manager speaking. So you look at this guy, are you normal? So how do you expect others to respect you if you don't respect yourself? So the respect must start, human rights observation must start at home. Then gradually, because we don't look at ourselves. Look at even the language you use in a newsroom. Sometimes harassing everybody. The journalism of 1972, where jeans and started jeans and t-shirt. Journalists are now people have gone to school, graduate with a tie. So how do you handle such a person? So that the factory approach to managing a newsroom must change. People are now talking about human relations. We still have human resource departments in newsrooms, where people are still talking about how do you relate as a human. So media must also grow, and we are not saying everything is bad, but we must also grow and say, as a public accountability institution, as a fourth estate, that's minimum things we must do.
All those things that you've talked, Victor, are at management level, whether middle management or senior management, right?
Yes.
So as a media council, and you as a director in charge of training and development, I know you have a lot of programs as media council that look at training journalists on how best to, cover stories, how to develop their career. Are there any programs from the media council that look at how to manage media as an industry?
Yes. Thanks. We have a whole curriculum on media viability, on media development. We have brought short courses, because the issue of specialization also is a major thing. Remember, unlike our time when we used to do journalism as a postgrad, currently somebody starts with a certificate in journalism, a diploma in journalism, and remember, news values are the same, so that our curriculum does not enrich somebody to grow and get more expanded in knowledge. And that's why we have introduced short courses on climate change, on management, on media, photography, so that we help people also specialize with the general knowledge from the academy, then you come and get short courses on a specialized area on business reporting, on the result that this then also makes you an expert.
That is on reporting. How about on management?
Management,
like, do you have proper? You've talked about human resource versus human relations and all. Are there programs where you've invited human resource departments from media houses, big or small, to actually come and go through this training?
Eric, we have done. We have a curriculum on media management. We have a curriculum on financial literacy for journalists. We have others. But one of the funny things is that journalists will never rarely come for these things, even where we have paid for and everything is there. And the biggest even problem we are getting is with the what we call now the big six or the mainstream media. Because outside the community media, the small, the local based media embrace this because they appreciate the role of management, resource mobilization, development of business plans for their media. But if I came here, I would tell you, Standard is a big media house. Do you think we don't have such things in our, so there's a lot of resistance from, yet we know there are some gaps that sometimes you benefit from some of these short courses. So we want, because we're also wondering, most of you, when they want to promote you, Eric, they will take you for a master's in business administration as well as one sort of master's in news reporting, or so a lot of media houses are taking their staff whom you know to Harvard, to business school. So at the bigger level, but at the lower level, we are running a very, 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 very deliberate program on media viability, and the media viability curriculum includes management, resource mobilization, development of business plans, mental health, and all that, because these are 360-degree approach to how we must help. So we just need people to embrace and attend, because a number of journalists also are too busy for themselves. That this newsroom is addictive. Yeah. That somebody will tell them there's a training here on this and this that might be helpful for your career growth. Somebody starts with asking you how much you will pay them. Yet when I go to the University of Nairobi, I pay fees. So here I'm calling for a training, you're asking me how much I'll pay you. Then two, the thinking that a newsroom will die if you are not there. So even when Eric is on off, he must hang around the newsroom, and yet somebody has prepared a training for you. They have called a training. Bloomberg brought a very good course, which we did and for journalists for growth. There's now some course at Aga Khan University, and the Media Council itself is offering those courses. So we want to encourage journalists also at whatever level to embrace it, because again, as you grow, one time, for example, if you became a CEO of Standard Group, you need these management skills. So journalists must stop also just looking at themselves as only reporters, only news. We must also start looking at this. We must grow at some stage. At one time, you will become your own manager of your own maybe production firm. Yeah. So we want to encourage journalists that these opportunities are there. We every day sit and think about how do we improve, because without journalists, Media Council will be regulating who? Sure. So we have every interest in having journalists there, and journalists who are competent and journalists who are comfortable and can work.
Journalists have also taken a hit recently, I guess over the last, a number of years, that, the art of chasing the story seems to be lost on a lot of journalists. The art of digging, beneath the surface to find out what's really going on, which is one element of journalism. I mean, it's not the whole thing, but it's one element for which people are very interested to hear. Investigative journalism, really finding out what the real story is. Do you agree with that? That we've lost a bit of the value?
Yes, big time. Investigative. I just did a study for an international group called Bwire Media Institute in Sweden on the state of investigative journalism in Africa. And I was the lead researcher, so I did almost all the countries in East. And while in other countries, there's a growth in investigative public interest journalism, not necessarily through mainstream media, but from digital platforms, to a number of journalists who leave mainstream media, maybe out of frustration. The General Alan Namu, Mohammed Jitopevu issue with Standard. A number of journalists are moving out of mainstream media and forming collaborations and starting their own investigative. So there's generally a growth of investigative data journalism in Africa, generally. That's not happening in Kenya, because in Kenya we are only talking about African Uncensored, which is, but if you go to South Africa currently, you go to West Africa, especially Nigeria, a very big increase in investigative journalism, especially outside mainstream media houses through digital platforms. Kenya, like we mentioned, yes, and this is also coming while all the time People are saying newsrooms have no time, have no resources to spend on deep investigative journalism. But I believe that's a very simplistic approach to dealing with a big issue. Because, for example, Media Council runs grants. We give journalists grants to go and do investigative journalism. So why would you say money is the problem? So let's not look for money to use money as a reason of why we are not doing journalism, simply because newsroom. Because I know, including Media Council, I know, including other international organizations that I know, you can pitch a story and you'll be given money to do that investigative journalism. So people should not run quickly and say newsrooms are not willing to, because even when we started the grant-making scheme of giving journalists some money to go and do stories, there was again a lot of resistance from mainstream media houses. Yet philanthropy journalism has taken root globally. I mean, that's a brand of journalism that is growing, and people are partnering, cross-border journalism. People are coming together and saying this is a public interest issue, and if it's just money, we can put together our resources and use Spice the platform, but we can support. So let's also people, and now some of the things that we also have finding problem that is impossible, and this is why I've talked to the Aga Khan University. We want to introduce a course on how to write grant-making stories, or stories, a grant application that can win your story.
Right.
Because we have these grants, but even getting a journalist to just write a proposal on what he wants to go and do and budget is also a challenge.
Why is that a challenge?
Because we have limited ourselves to be just story writers,
right?
And we never think about life-saving skills that a journalist needs to know how to write a proposal. It's sometimes embarrassing, I can tell you, on air. We sometimes offer some mentorship for some of our journalists, some jobs, kidogo hapa na pale. You ask somebody to write an invoice. Send me your profile and your invoice. But someone lipe tu pesa yangu niende. You know, but that, some of these are processes. So we must also expand.
But Bwire, everything you're saying seems to point towards an industry that seems to be collapsing. Because I've listened, and what dominates the conversation is the things that are wrong. Now, our journalism, I'm talking about, let's talk about Kenya. We live in a certain ecosystem. I am not a journalist in the conventional way of the term. Yes, I'm not a journalist. And so my views may be the views of somebody who is looking from the outside in. I'm now in, yes, but my views have been curated by being on the outside. And my understanding of journalism, and I'm looking at the challenge, it boils down to something that the ecosystem we have in this country has dominated. It's called entrepreneurship. So there are people who are die-hard journalists, people who, the old school variety of journalists who, truth seekers and people who want to raise the bar. And then it's against the headwinds of a whole crop of people who've joined that particular industry, that fraternity. And what they are espousing is the ethos of the day. And it's not just in journalism, it's in almost every other sector in this country. What is in it for me? Not whether I stand for the truth or whether I have this larger goal that I want to put across. And it's not just with the journalists, but also with the management. Because if you are talking about how something isn't quite working, the question that comes to my mind is, okay, are we seeing some of these things that we talk about, what you're referring to as mass sacking or retrenchment, are we seeing this as strategic undertakings, or are we seeing it as a display of incompetence? What exactly are we seeing?
Did you say that you're seeing like these are signs of a dying horse?
I'm on record, and I've written on record, and it has been published in the Standard and other newspapers, and I've said that approach is wrong. It has never worked. It will never work. The issue of mass sackings and the way we are treating that problem is not. World Bank has done studies globally where they have said an industry or a company that is struggling cannot take the route of sacking or early retirement to survive. Because when you use mass sacking or the approach of relieving people, retrenching, because even the people started retrenched, they have never paid them their pension.
This is the World Bank.
So they can even go and sue them. So, you have added the problem. And the World Bank says...
World Bank.
Studies have been done on companies.
The one that talks about privatization
and they have said...
And the removal of subsidies.
And staff rationalization in government and all.
And there's research. Every successive government in this country, we have seen, Eric, when they come, they will talk about wage bill, we will sack, but it never happens. Has it ever happened?
Sacking of civil servants.
Yes, they always promise we'll remove this, we'll remove it, but they don't. Because
The last time it happened was structural adjustment program done by the World Bank.
Yes.
And it failed miserably. So the reason is, they say, in a company, once you give people an opportunity to leave, for example, early retirement, or you want to sack them or whatever, you lose the best. Because the best, the young, the educated, the creative, the courageous will take their money and go and try something. The company remains with people who have lost hope, and it cannot survive with that. So that one, we have said a lot of time that the issue of mass sackings can never solve the problem in the industry.
City, give him some Minute Maid. It's time for a Minute Maid break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
News with Victor Bwire from the Media Council of Kenya. City, had you finished asking your question?
No, I hadn't actually.
Okay.
I hadn't, because you see, remember, this is a perspective of a lay person who just only recently joined this fraternity that we refer to as the media. And what I believe was big on the agenda and what made media what it was something I could refer to as a social responsibility. And it was laced with an acceptable aspect about it, in that there was integrity attached to it. But then, how then do you marry this with a profit-making venture that is also part and parcel of the media's mandate, because it's a business? And then what do you do when the money-making venture, especially at the individual level, where one uses the platform of, say, a media house or the business of media to make profit for yourself, and yet your primary mandate is as an employee? So the very, very, very tool and the very, very essence of this particular business stands a very great chance of being compromised. That is, the truth now takes a back seat, and profit and the pursuit of it takes the pivotal role.
Thanks. There are people who do, like you said rightly, the primary role of the media is the social responsibility. And there are institutions that have played that role so well up to date. We are facing challenges, but we are not saying journalism is dead. I mean, that's not the conclusion. There's a very bright future and things are happening. The only thing is that to assume that nothing is happening and keep quiet and assume, then you miss it. Because if you look at journalism purely from a commercial sense to make money, and which most of our media houses are doing, to make money alone, then you also lose it. There must be a balance between making the money, because this is an investment, it must make returns, but at what level are we saying we will serve the public if our interest is purely commercial? And that balance has been done elsewhere. It's not a magic. It's just people coming to sit down and say, how much do we... You remember the rule of 60 to 40? 60 editorial, 40 commercial, or you can decide 50-50 or 40 commercial. These are discussions and models that have worked elsewhere. It's not a magic thing. And what media is requesting is not a favor from anywhere, but there are models that have worked. We want to make profits because it's a business. It must have running costs. Yes. And that's genuine. But we also have a social responsibility of some of these things. Not every story we must look at how much money it will bring. Some of these things we do them because of public interests. So how do we balance? And people have worked. In fact, there's a team that has been sent to India, Bwire, and they are saying, if, for example, media houses are feeling the pinch because of global, COVID, post, and those are realities. Nobody's refusing that. But are there other approaches we can use, for example, so that we continue serving the public? And processes have worked. For example, why do we sell a newspaper in Kenya at 60 shillings? The cost of production for a newspaper in Kenya is too high. And sometimes a lot of the money goes either to taxes or to other operational costs. How do we deal with this? Why, for example, as a discussion, can we as an industry, and what India has done, and approach government and say, because of the challenges, and other sectors have gone through KEPSA, Kenya private sector, and approach a government and we say, we can zero rate or reduce taxes on newsprint, because that's one of the most expensive item when a newspaper making. Equipment for broadcasting is so high to import in this country. I mean, as an approach, it can be a temporary measure, and industry reaches out and says government can consider, so that then cost can go towards maintaining journalists who bring these stories. You see, it's not an either or. There are other ventures where the industry, and that's part of the discussion actually, either this week or next week, the industry is meeting, that it's no longer about journalists alone. The investors, the media managers, advertisers, commercial, people must come to the table and say, remember yesterday in Tanzania, the government has set up a task force to look at what is ailing the industry. Can media continue playing the public role if it's in the current state? If we are talking about content is the king, because people primarily want that good content for public service, for public interest. But we are not saying about content is the king when you have sacked all the people who have been bringing the content. So where are you getting this content that should be the king?
But
so
what has made you sack them? It's because you don't have the money to actually sustain
and that's
them.
what I'm saying. When we look at money per se, then we miss the whole thing. There are in some countries like the Scandinavian countries, there's what is called a media diversity fund, where government supports media, whether it's private or not. But they made up a case that for us to continue serving the public interest, there are challenges of operational costs, we need support. And those countries have a media support fund, where government, from the taxpayers' money, they support media because they know the critical role of media. There are countries like Australia. South Africa has now a media fund. These things are possible. So we are saying that we cannot just say because of money we give up and say now it's profit. But if we are getting these challenges and we can't do the private, the social responsibility, how else can we? Let's also look at the supply. Are we supplying content that meets the social responsibility? But if we give up and allow, fail to meet, for example, pay journalists because shareholders must get a profit at the end of the month, and we are not, and we allow our journalists to become extorters in town, then we are failing. That's how the private interest, because a guy gets a public interest story, then he looks, he has not paid rent for 2 months, then the guy says, kill this story, I'll give you around 10,000. So, so those are challenges, yes. But what we are saying that something can be done about it. It's not that it's a lost cause.
But then, that's where the institutions such as the Media Council would come in. So you are quasi-government.
Yes.
Then there is the Communications Authority, which licenses media houses. We've got the Media Owners Association, which is now bringing together the owners of media houses, mainly mainstream media, and there's government itself. Let me start with the government. Government attitude towards media can be seen with how government supports the public broadcaster, KBC.
Yes.
Okay? And we just look at how much attention KBC gets from its mother, then you can just see
huge.
Government does not really think media is any important. Where do you come in there to make sure that, first of all, the first thing that you do is protect the public broadcaster, so the public broadcaster remains vibrant and relevant to the country?
Eric, one of the things, and I had this discussion about KBC, about GA, and there's a lot of misinformation. The government spends so much money on KBC that when somebody says, and books are there, you can go to Treasury website and look at how much money government gives KBC. It's not a private, it's not secret. So and successively, I can tell you, because we sit with the KBC in the same subsector, we are in the same ministry. And I see KBC making their budgets, how much they are allocated. It might not meet what they want. I mean, just like all public institutions. But government has been supportive to KBC and without and most of the programs.
Is it supportive for development, or is it supportive for maintaining, just sustaining it?
It's not just
what I'm asking is it sufficient support? Is it what the public broadcaster needs to stay afloat and to serve that social good and public good?
Sometimes, many times, like now, KBC is among the key institutions government is reforming to make it a public, like the law requires. So that's a priority to government. So if it was not caring about KBC, it wouldn't have been a priority to the current government. They are even forming a task force very soon that will transform KBC into a proper public broadcaster. So
Meaning it isn't a proper
today, as it is a state broadcaster. It was never moved as the constitution expected. It's still a state broadcaster. So those are some of the things that are happening. But like I mentioned, it's just like Kenyatta National Hospital. Sometimes when you hear something has happened, you never look at how much request that Kenyatta give to government for support, so that if they are unable to do one or two things, I'm just using Kenyatta.
Yeah.
So KBC puts a request to government. It's true. Sometimes government does not give them fully all they want, just like even the Media Council gives a budget to government which is never fully funded. But government has been responsive. I have seen when Dr. Naim Bilal came, when managing director Samuel Maina, government gives, and things are not the way people think outside. And KBC today, if you visit KBC today, obviously it's not full satisfaction that all people would want, but there are a lot of transformation, there are a lot of things that happen. Some of these things are purely management things, but I can tell you there's a lot of change. So that's there in terms of support. And we have engaged, in different manners. So KBC has not been abandoned as it were. And there's a lot of engagement. There are also a lot of historical things at KBC that also at the time there was a huge loan of equipment from Japan that grew, but government has taken over that loan now to Treasury. So there's a lot of positive vibes, positive engagements from the government towards KBC, and which has been there. If we looked at I remember some of the bills they had were cleared. There's a time KBC had a problem with medical cover. Government came in. There was a time they had other issues of debts and what. So there are a lot of things that have been done. There was a lot of the issue of statutory deductions. They were not being remitted, and which affected obviously staff morale and the rest. But some of those things have been strategically been dealt with. They have not been completely cleared. But there's a lot of positive development about public broadcasting, as it were. But again, you also notice in a country where media space is dominated purely by private broadcasters, and that's the question you ask: private but social responsibility. Because you go to people are what is called impulsive investment in media, and media is treated as an extractive industry. Come, open a radio station, make money, and go away, or make money, buy a house in Runda or somewhere. So people are not reinvesting in the industry. That's one of the major problems. Radio is making business, but you go to places. Like, for example, Meru town. Meru has nearly over 14 radio stations, 6 TV stations. And you look at the market and the number of mouths. You obviously start noticing this is not investment for public good. This is purely somebody who is making opens, picks money, and especially along election time. So a number of the investors also in media. Look at, for example, a newspaper like Taifa Leo. For quite some time, Aga Khan used to maintain that newspaper, not because it was making money, but he just said it's a public good and we need people to read. And he used to sustain it. And one of the discussions we were having yesterday, when things were good, some of these companies were keeping money elsewhere. They have foundations, they have what. But we also have a challenge where, for example, a board of a media house has stayed over 30 years. These people, even what they are thinking now about that industry, today is a profession. Yet, some of these things are changing too far. Look at our media houses and look at their boards. They have overstayed, some of them. They don't move, there's no changing. Yet, boards are the people that bring the policy and thinking. So, once people are comfortable, the board, once the CEO reports profit from Standard, the board is relaxed, then it becomes a problem. So, there are administrative things, there are legal things, obviously in the law, and like we mentioned, we have said the public good of media is going down because of cost related, because of post motive, and that's why we are saying the media industry is putting a request to government to consider introducing a media diversity fund to support media. But there are also corporate issues in the media that must be handled. If we are going to get all the little money we get and we are not reinvesting in the industry to get that public good, the social responsibility. Every time the little money we get, we sponsor golf tournaments, we other things that are not related to media, but at the same time we are complaining how we don't have resources to maintain journals, then we're also missing it. So there must be a conversation. One time one senior editor said, when we are laying off people from jobs, we look at those who earn high. So it's not about the productivity of somebody. You are just sacking somebody because was it a crime to earn a high salary?
You're looking at the bottom line. You need.
But it's not a crime for somebody to earn high. Why do you sack somebody because he's earned? In the first place, it's you who started.
Can take it and share it amongst others.
And two, you notice also, the people, the mass sackings as it were, are not serving it. You are sacking 300 people who have been paying 15,000, 27 shillings per centimeter or 500 shillings per clip when they send here story. So you look at the 200 people you have sacked, what is the saving? It's not even there. So some of these things we are just bringing a bad name to the industry for nothing. Because they are not helping the industry to go where it is. There are more approaches that can be used.
But are you saying that some of the actions that you're referring to are not actually informed by data? They are not informed by facts. They are not informed by an understanding of what is actually happening.
Today you will sack 100 mass sackings. Tomorrow I'll see an advert, standard employee. So what data has informed? Because I see one media house in Bungoma has sacked all. They have not paid for their staff for 6 months. They have sacked. Today I'm seeing an advert, they are recruiting. So if it was informed, if you have, then why are you repeating this? Because the same people who are being, some of them are sacked from permanent contracts. But the following day, they are retained back to be the columnists, to be the everything. So, some of these things is what. So that's what we are saying. There's too much focus on the supply side. We're also not looking at the demand side. What is what does the audience want? And how do we satisfy this audience?
But you
demand?
As a media council, what have you done, or what do you do, what do you plan to do to remedy this situation? Because you have a clear understanding of it. You are the media council after all.
Yes. One of the challenge which we have surpassed that we have been having is the issue of ego and personal look at things. This is an industry issue. It's no longer about standard. It's no longer about nation. It's no longer about capital. It's now a media industry issue that people must come to the table and discuss. And that's why I would say in the meeting that is coming up, because we have raised some of these things, but somebody will say, we are a big company, we have invested, we have taken our managers to Harvard, we don't need your support. But you dismiss me today, but tomorrow I see you have that problem. So what we are saying that people must stop and say, let's come together to a table and have a dialogue on how are we salvaging the industry. It's no longer about you as the executive or me. It's about an industry that is obviously, like you mentioned, when people are being sacked, they are losing jobs, and yet other industries are being helped to grow, to employ. As we are going down to. So what we have decided is that as an industry, because we have some of this discussion, we have gone to these countries, we have seen how, I was giving an example of Vision in Uganda, Vision newspaper, which is, had almost gone, it's also a public newspaper, but it's coming by. We have given example from Guardian, New York, those examples and others. So what we are saying that not is just people to come and say, as an industry, there are administrative things that purely are standard. There are legal things that need industry approach for government to change a few to create a conducive working environment for media to make some profit. And then there are other alternatives that media can use. You see, like when I bring a donor, for example, a friend who wants to fund some public interest, something on climate change for the Standard. Or I'm just using the Standard because I'm in the Standard, so it's not.
That's what you're doing.
Then Standard asks me, you are bringing somebody to help us do it. What is the interest? Are they going to influence our editorial? But we are saying
it's a legitimate concern.
These guys are giving you their resources. Media Council gives grants. But we never follow a journalist to ask which story. So long as you do your story and publish, that's it. Eric, you remember Amref used to take us out to go to look for in their project. Amref would carry you with a chopper, go. They will never tell you even which story, which angle you want to take. They will just take you to get you. So even if you want to hit them, that's your business. And there are purely some people who are just interested in the public interest, that if we allow media to rely on the commercial approach, they are going to die.
How do you vet those? How do you vet to make sure that their intention is clear and it's noble? Because then you'll also agree that there are those who will, say that they're sponsoring a journalist so that they can curate a story. They'll curate an itinerary so that the journalist just sees one side of a story, and the journalist will not be facilitated to actually get to see the other side of the story. By the time they come back, they only have one view.
Eric, I've seen a number of CEOs for media signing MOUs with the governors. I see them. So the agreement are supposed to help media not to cover those counties negatively or what. So on one side we are saying we don't want to engage. On the other side we are signing MOUs. So one of the things is, for example, a group like Bill Gates, for example, I'm just using it. They will sign with you a broad agreement and allow you to run that country, those resources the way you want. They are not there to micromanage.
Actually, no.
So philanthropy, journalism,
very
and
rarely,
you can read.
Very rarely do donors allow you
But we run
to
a
run
grant.
the money the way you want.
We run a grant ourselves.
Are you telling me that you're given a grant without conditions?
Yes, we give.
No,
And you can ask
not
people.
you, the people who. Where do you get the grant money from?
Government of Kenya.
Okay, and you're saying there are no stipulations
There
as
are
to
not.
how the grant can
from
be
the
used.
government of Kenya.
Ask any journalist from Standard who
Okay.
have won that award and
Do you
ask if we
get
give
grants? Do you get grants from other institutions that are not government?
them. No, largely we work with, we are fully
So,
funded.
City's
our grant
argument
system,
is the other. Government has this overall responsibility. Now, these other institutions have an agenda.
Eric, and that's why when we get stuck in the old model of thinking of editorial discretion that journalists, once you give them money, they become this stamp, they just write the story you want, then we are missing it. You have gone to school, Mwami, and you are a very highly educated person, and somebody cannot just mislead you to write a wrong story because he gave you some 100,000. Let's be frank. We had a media fund. You remember all the donors came together through the Kenya Media Fund, HIVOS. They used to give money up to, between 200 to 500. You just write a proposal, we give. John Alanam, currently, what does he do? He works with donors. Why aren't those donors influencing his stories? And we are saying John Alanam is one of the best public interest investigative journalists who is working with freelance to do stories. Why does it become a problem to Standard that say that this donor will influence our story? Why? Are we saying that we are unable to say you can't cross?
Touche. Sawa.
So because those are the approaches, philanthropy journalism has become one of the areas where institutions that are interested in public interest, the social responsibility of media, are willing. Some of the donors are even anonymous. They just some of these subscribers in some of this New York Guardian are people who just want to know, and they subscribe anonymously because they want to support the public good. So we must also open up some of this discussion, and we are able to know. The whole Standard management will be able to know this is a donor who has bad intentions. This
one has good intentions.
so
Victor,
we should not run and hide.
Thank you.